All right, cool. Good to see everybody. Thanks for coming. We are going to call the Town Council public hearing for the Narragansett School Department fiscal year budget for 2023 to order, March 28th, 2022 at 7:02 p.m. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I'm not sure. All right, so this is our, actually, just a quick question. Do we not need, we don't have a stenographer for this? Okay, all right. So this is our public hearing on the budget for the Narragansett School Department as submitted for fiscal year 2023. And we have our school superintendent, Dr. Peter Cummings, here with us this evening to present. So I'm not going to do a long intro. I'll just hand it off to Peter, and you can get us started. Thank you.
Oh, great. Thanks, Jesse. Hello, everyone. Good to see you all again. It's good to see you in person this year. So tonight I will give a brief overview of our budget, and then take any questions or comments that you all might have. We'll give as many details as we can tonight. If you have some questions to which we don't have the immediate answer, I can certainly get back to you on some pieces. I'd like to also thank our school committee for being here this evening. And so, they've handed off to me to give the initial presentation, but are certainly available for all of you as well. So let me begin tonight with just some thank yous. So our administrative staff begins pulling our budget together in October when we start looking at our forecasts for enrollment, when we start looking at our facilities planning. And so we go kind of all the way through, and many of you have been a part of this with our building committees and capital improvement plans. So Karen, our Director of Finance, does the bulk of the work on the budget. So I am grateful for her presence. And as always, she's here to help me out with any details on anything we might have going forward. But it really is a team effort for all of us going forward. As you know, we do have a whole budget process that aligns with the town budget process. So if we were to look at our schedule right now, we are at the public hearing on the school budget. Should there be a need for a meeting between the school committee and the town council?
Excuse me for one moment. Jesse, I don't think there was a vote to open the public hearing.
Yeah, I only read from the agenda, so. Do we have a motion to open a public hearing on the budget for the Narragansett School Department as submitted for fiscal year 2023?
Second.
All right, motion by Patrick, second by Eva, so we're now open. You don't have to repeat everything, no, we're good.
It's like that didn't even happen. But the past couple of years, we haven't needed to have that meeting, but it is on the books in case it's necessary, and then we align with the rest of the budget for you all as you all go through the process. So one of the places for us to start is just to talk about who are our students. We are here to serve our students. It's good to know who they are and where they're coming from. So we are responsible for all the students that you see listed here. So within our schools, we have 1,189, but we're financially responsible for all of the other students that you see listed here. So we have 8 students who are out of district placements for special education whose needs can't be met within the district. We have 15 students who go out to other schools for career and tech programs. So they may go to Charahoe, they may go to Rogers, they may go to North Kingstown. We have 12 students who attend charter schools, and so again, those are students for whom we pay a full tuition, so the equivalent of some of our per pupil goes out to the charter schools. We do have 21 students who are homeschooled, which is still high for us. That's still a remnant of the pandemic. So we had a lot of students come back last year, not all, and some stayed out at the beginning of the year and are just staying out until the end of this year. and should be coming back next year. We do take in 31 students from Jamestown at our high school, and so Jamestown students can choose to either go to North Kingstown High School or to Narragansett High School, and so we have 31 students there. We do have 84 students coming into us from out of district. Most are regional, either South Kingstown, North Kingstown, East Greenwich. We do have students coming from as far away as Tiverton, and so we do take kids in from all over the place. And there are 48 Narragansett residents that attend private school, so that could be Monsignor Clark, that could be LaSalle, Hendricken, anything along those ways. So we have right now, it says 11% free and reduced lunch. That is a bit of a misleading statistic. Last year it was around 20%. There's an ongoing issue within the state where the federal government and the state government made lunch free for all students. And so because of that, the actual paperwork that students typically need to hand in to be identified as free and reduced lunch students, which is really often a sign of poverty, people aren't handing it in. And so this is typical across the whole state. It's not just Narragansett. And so the numbers are not very accurate right now because there's no incentive to hand in the paperwork because you're already receiving free and reduced lunch. And so we're trying to incentivize that. It is an issue for districts across the state because part of our funding formula is related to the number of free and reduced lunch students that you have. And so, for example, we would have taken a severe cut in our state aid at 11% versus 20%. The legislature, fortunately, is due to support the current level of state aid, so it's not a number I'm worried about right now, but it is something that we have to address long term. We have around 11% students of color, less than 1% English language learners, around 16.5% students with IEPs, and about 4% students who require accommodations or 504 plans. So how are we staffed? We have about 250 total employees, roughly 140 teachers, 33 and a half teaching assistants. We have 27 transportation employees, and that means bus drivers, bus assistants, that type of thing. Around 18 people work in grounds, facilities, and maintenance, so that's our custodians, that type of thing. Then 14 and a half secretaries, 14 and a half administrators, and 3.7 people working in technology. So there is the bulk, and you'll see this, the bulk of our budget is in staffing. It is a labor-intense endeavor to run a school. The whole point of the schools is to support the interaction between teachers and students and content. So everything that we do is pointed in that direction. But just to think about some highlights from the past year, so one of the things that has been top priority, even though it is certainly fading, but our district and school responses to the pandemic. We're still in recovery mode. We're still helping students recover from their learning loss. We have a lot of mental health issues with students and with families. And so there's a lot of resources going into supporting students to get them back on track. We do have expanded participation in AP and college level courses, so we continue to up the number of kids taking those AP courses, those URI courses. We're actually adding AP courses every year, which is really a challenging thing to do in a high school of our size, of a high school of around 500 students. We also have increasing enrollment in our career and technical education programs. And so that's our ag, computer science, plumbing, and education programs continue to grow. Actually, our first cohort of plumbing students will graduate this year, so we're really excited about that. And we are also going to be starting a new CTE program, actually, in digital media literacy. And so that is really around video production, which is going to be an exciting program at the high school. We have also started our own transition academy for 18 to 21 students. So instead of paying for them to go out, we are bringing them back into school. So you will see them in their van working in the area, and that's for students with more severe special needs for whom we are required to educate until they are 22. Our preschool is fully enrolled, again, really exciting. That's really supported by people throughout town. We actually, the other day, had someone call to reserve a spot, and she has not yet given birth. And so, we're excited that they're excited about it. We will find a spot for her child. And so, that's really a program that is very popular, and we're seeing great gains from that. And so when you look at the data several years ago, we had a much higher rate of special education identification in grades K1 and 2. Having a preschool that we're having most of our kids go to, that early intervention is having a huge benefit for students so that they're not behind the 8 ball and are not requiring those special education services early on, and they're set up for success. A key metric for us is reading at grade level on 3rd grade, and that continues to go up every year, and we do see a direct tie to the preschool with that. And on a happy note, the school committee has been able to invest in playgrounds for the preschool and the middle school. Middle school was a lot of parent fundraising, supported that. We're grateful for that. We helped put that in. And the preschool, we had to redo the playground for accreditation, and that's really cute if you get a chance to go over there. So where are we going, right? And again, this is really thinking about the budget going forward. What does the money go to? Again, it's continued COVID-19 response. It's around staffing, student mental health. It's really around tutoring. So we have a tutoring program where we've had really great success on getting kids back up to grade level. We've had a lot of our elementary school students take part in that. Our program development in CTE is really important. So our plumbing, education, and agri-science and computer science, again, top notch. We're getting more and more kids applying to those every year. We've been doing a lot of work on ELA, or English language and mathematics curriculum. One of the state statutes that we are having to implement is around having an approved and viable curriculum. And so what that has meant is, while we've always been really happy with our curriculum here, it has to meet certain guidelines put out by the state. And so that has required some investment in redoing some of our resources and curriculum work. And it's also around investing in our college level courses and our AP courses. Safety continues to be important to us, so we continue to invest in our school resource officers, in our safety enhancements, both electronically, right? So keeping kids safe online, and physically, right? Making sure that our schools are safe and have the proper precautions in place. And then finally, maintaining and repairing our school facilities. So one of the things, as you all know, is that we put about 3% of our budget into infrastructure every year. We will continue to do that this year. You'll see in a bit, the auditorium renovation is the big project for this year. But the whole intent is not letting our buildings go into disrepair. Part of doing that is continuing to invest in them in upkeep and maintenance so that we don't have big repair projects in the future. We're able to keep them up as we go forward. So where is our enrollment? So our enrollment continues to be fairly stable. We are losing some students next year. And so one of the things that we've certainly talked about informally is the idea that it continues to be challenging for families to buy a house in Narragansett. And so we are graduating a class of 120. Around 110 of them will be Narragansett students. We're going to take in a kindergarten class of around 60. And so while we do get students moving in, that is a decline of students when you're graduating a really large class and taking in a smaller class. And so we are making the staffing adjustments that we need to do, and you'll see that in a second, to accommodate that long term. But it is an issue for us long term in terms of having the numbers of kids that we need to have. So the high school continues to be the biggest that it's been. It's around 500 or so. The middle school is really the one taking the brunt of the number of kids that we're losing, the middle school and the elementary school. So we will be going down by one classroom next year in both kindergarten and grade 1. And that's to reflect the number of students that we will have in both of those areas. So what do we have in terms of incoming students and outcoming students in CTE? This has been a question in past years for us. So next year, we do project that we will take in roughly 121 students into our programs at the high school. So that will be Jamestown, agri-science, computer science, plumbing, and education. And we do anticipate somewhere between 35 and 45 students will go out. The nature of schools in this day and age is that it's much more flexible. So we're not going to be a district that only take kids in. There are going to be Narragansett students that want opportunities for programs that we don't offer. Some kids just want a little bit of a bigger setting, or they want to do culinary, for example, which we don't have, and they may go to Charahoe for that. And so it's just a little more flexible than it's been. We are fortunate in that our programs are very well regarded and very popular, so we do tend to take in far more students than leave Narragansett. So what are the budget considerations that we have? Well, certainly we are in a year where we're negotiating our contracts with both of our unions. We have 2 unions in the schools. One is our support staff, one is our teachers. So the cost of contractual obligations is certainly something that is a major budget driver. Again, about 80% of our budget is salary and benefits. And so those contractual obligations for public sector employees are something that drive our costs. The second thing that we have is we are fully funding our OPEB obligation. So that's the cost of retirees. I know the town is doing the same. It's related to the town bond rating, and so we've had a lot of kind of conferences with Christine and Jim about that, and so we are able to fully fund the OPEB obligation that we have. Financing our long-term capital improvements, so that's the auditorium this year, but that is something that we invest in every year. The pandemic recovery, again, that's extra staff for us. So it's extra interventionists, it's extra reading teachers, it's extra mathematics tutors, it's people to really get kids back up to speed. While I believe that we did as well as anybody else and probably better than most during the pandemic in getting kids up to speed and engaging with them, it still wasn't like being in school, and so we still have some recovery to do there. Our investment in early childhood education, career and tech, and AP program, again, there is program investment in that. You don't just get the kids to come in. We have to have great programs. So that is equipment, that is, we have to continue to renovate our preschool rooms so that each one has a bathroom and each one has certain things that are required for accreditation. We do have tuition obligations that go out. And again, we want to have great schools. We want families to move to Narragansett for the schools. We think that they do. We think that lots of families kind of put aside the price of the house and really want their kids to go to school here, but that doesn't happen by accident. We're really intentional about having great schools here. We staff for it. We make sure that we have great programs. We're always on top of kind of adjusting to make sure that kids are having access and opportunity, and that has to be intentional, and that requires resources as we go forward. So what does our staff look like for next year? We do have some adjustments around staff. Overall, I think for the purposes of this conversation, it's important for you all to know the overall cut to staff is 2, right? So there'll be 2 full-time employees that will be down, mostly at the elementary school, and some adjustments at some other schools, really having to do with enrollment patterns as they go forward. So the other big cost for us for this year is the capital investment. As we've talked about for the last couple of years, that's going to be the auditorium renovation. So we anticipate that will be $1,500,000 this year. Associated projects that have to do with that is the air handler replacement. So that is, while it's a separate project, it's related to the auditorium. It goes right on top of the auditorium. And so if you do one, you have to do both. And then the Safe Routes to School project, really dug up our student parking lot. And so we do have to do that to make it usable, and that's all in kind of the same area for next year. So that's a total capital investment of $1,944,000. And we do believe that we can fit that within the budget for this year, have that project start this summer, and hopefully will be done by Thanksgiving is the timeline. So overall, the budget for the schools with the fully funding OPEB and doing the capital investment, the increase would be 4.37%, which is an increase of $1,450,250. However, what that looks like for the town, I'll move ahead for a little bit, is that sorry about that, the town contribution, right, would go up 2.15%. So the town contribution would be up $582,000. Where does that all go? Well, when we look at this, what we're really looking at as we go through is that salaries with the cuts and changes that we're doing are up around 2.77%. The benefits are up, and the benefits are up everywhere. We anticipate that will be in the range of up around 5%. We are self-insured. We are in the WB cooperative. We think that we get a really good deal with that, but benefits are expensive. Overall, our other purchase services, which is, again, some of what we do with our special education students, that's another one that's up quite a bit. But overall, we do see, around a 4% increase. Now, when we go into what are the big drivers of that, as I said before, for us, it's really around salaries and benefits. So salaries are 52% of our budget. Benefits are 26% of our budget. And so it is a person-intensive endeavor. The whole point is to support that interaction of teachers, students, and content. So everything we're doing is really investing in the classroom. And you'll see these other pieces are there. They're a smaller part of our budget, and they're really there to make sure that we're supporting those classroom interactions. So overall, as I said before, the salaries are up around 2.7%, and benefits are up around 5.2%. And the benefits are a little bit of anticipation. That's what the WB and some of the other people are telling us that we should be budgeting for that for next year. Part of that is also us properly budgeting for our OPEB obligations and properly budgeting for being self-insured. As I said before, around 4.37%, town contribution is 2.1%. So how will it be funded? Well, we believe that, again, the budget as designed and as approved by the school committee would have a 2% increase from the town. We are fortunate, and I know when we met earlier in the year, I was very worried about the state aid. The legislature has decided to level fund, or slightly reduce for us, but generally level fund state aid for school districts this year. They are working on the funding formula for school districts. We will have a long-term impact on the funding formula just because of the number of students that we have. When you have fewer students, you get less state aid. And so long-term, that will be an impact. We do think that long-term, we are hoping that more students will be attracted to Narragansett. When students are able to come from other districts, they come, right? So they come to our high school. It's really about making sure that there are affordable places for students to live, for families to live, and then they will, come to the schools. We do use our fund balance for operating per, the resolution that the town council made several years ago. So we use part of it of our fund balance for capital, and that will be $1,100,000. We do use the rest for operating, which is over $2 million. And so that, again, is really using our fund balance appropriately to make sure that we are taking available funds and applying that to, the day-to-day operations of the schools. We do have over $1 million coming in from tuitions. So again, that goes right back into the operating of the schools, and some money from Medicaid. So overall, that's an increase of 1,450,250 or 4.37%. One of the things I did want to call your all attention to is this. So in a report, and this is based on 2019, right? So these gaps may be even bigger. When you look at municipal budgets across South County, right, and you look at how much of the budget education, the town allocation to education takes, okay? Just in South County, Narragansett is at 50%, which is the lowest in South County. So if you look at the whole town budget, the schools are around 50% of that. And when you look at districts that are around us, so again, if you look at South Kingstown, that number is 70%. When you look at Westerly, that number is 68%. When you look at districts in Charahoe, that goes from 79%. You look at Charlestown, it's at 55%. Jamestown is at 55%, so we're at 50%. If you were then to take that and look at the whole state and who has the least percentage, so Narragansett is second lowest to Newport in the whole state. So, and Newport receives a lot of state funding. So if you were to rank order percentage of the town budget that goes to education, Newport is the lowest, Narragansett is the second lowest. So just in terms of providing resources to the schools, I would say that we have a really good school system that is providing excellent education to students when, in comparison to the rest of the state, is not a very big burden on the taxpayers. And so I think this budget request is reasonable given the statistics of that and given where our students are right now. So with that, I'll just remind everyone that, as I've said several times, if you want families to come to Narragansett, you got to have great schools. And we think that we do, and we think that people move here for the schools. But to have great schools, you have to invest in them. You have to have great staff. You have to have great facilities. You have to have a great curriculum. All of that takes resources that we think we use responsibly. And for us, as I've said before, it's really about having great teachers, and that takes training, that takes thoughtful hiring, that takes great leadership with our principals and our assistant principals and our curriculum leaders, and that all has to be housed in a well-maintained and safe building, which we believe we have. And over time, the council has really supported the schools, especially in my time here, which I'm deeply appreciative of, but I think you really see the benefits of that. And so we're able to be thoughtful. We're able to not have any surprises. We don't have big swings in our asks of the council, right? We're able to be kind of steady and predictable and know where we're taking the funds and investing them wisely. So with that, I will take any questions or comments that you might have.
Thank you, Dr. Cummings. Appreciate it. Why don't we just go around as we always do? I'll just go alphabetically. We'll start with Deb. Eva? Yeah, I'm still a year in. I'm still
I know,
going the
yeah.
wrong way. Eva.
Okay. Well, thank you for that very thorough and detailed presentation. I really appreciated it. Also appreciated the PowerPoint slides, but I didn't bring my glasses today, so I couldn't see it. So
I'm
if
so
you could
sorry.
just, I would appreciate if you could forward for me. So I really don't have any questions, but I just want to say thank you to everybody who worked on the budget.
No problem. We will send those right
Thank
to
you.
you.
All right, thanks, Eva. Deb.
I did bring my glasses, but they didn't do me any good because they're not for distance. But, so I would love a copy myself. And thank you very much. It was a very thorough presentation. And I do have a couple of questions. I'm unaware of, and I probably should be aware of it, but where does your fund balance come from and how much is there?
Good question. So the fund balance is, typically from either unspent savings from projects that may happen, right? And so we reinvest those back into capital. Sometimes we get those from how we budget for staff. So for example, we typically budget for a median cost teacher. And
Right.
so in the long run, sometimes it's more expensive, sometimes it's less,
yeah.
right? And so we've been able to hire a little bit less experienced, intentionally so at
Sure.
times, right? And those funds add up over time.
So what is the fund balance now?
And the fund balance, Karen can
Okay.
answer that one for me.
Hi, everyone. Right now, our undesignated fund balance is about $5 million.
Okay.
And so when we met in the capital reserve meeting a couple of weeks ago, one of the things that we discussed is we are applying most of the fund balance to this year's. We do have uncertainty around
Right.
next year's state funding.
Right.
And so the recommendation of the capital reserve was to hold some of that back just in case the bottom goes out of the state funding, which has happened, to several districts. So
Right.
there has been wild swings in the funding formula for some districts of over $700,000. We almost experienced that this year. If they hadn't held it hold harmless, we were due to lose almost $800,000, which would have been an extreme budget hit. So we are hedging our bets a little
As you
bit
should,
in
yeah.
terms of prepping in case that happens next year.
So another question that I have is the revenues that you receive from the students who come in for the CTE programs, do they cover the costs of completely cover the cost of the expense?
They do.
Okay. Hold on one second. So just to go back to the fund balance, so in the previous fiscal year, the 2021-22 fiscal year, well, you won't know yet if you have a fund balance, if you have unspent funds, right, from this year?
Yeah, we won't know. It looks like we will have a bit of one,
Okay.
right? But I can't
You
tell
can't,
you
yeah, I
exactly
know,
what that
I
would
know.
be yet.
And you also don't know for sure what your costs are going to be as far as medical and dental and all that stuff is concerned yet, for sure, right? Because
We don't know
that
that
changes
for
like the
sure.
wind, as I recall from my own experience. Okay, and I think I have the answers. I had a bunch of questions, but you actually answered many of them in your presentation, so I appreciate that immensely. I think that's all I have for the moment. Reserve the right to check and see.
Of course. Thank you,
Thanks a lot,
Deb.
Pierre.
Patrick, any questions?
Hello. Thank you for the presentation. Let's go back to the lunch program. That's a federal program is that funded or is that unfunded or?
It's funded, not funded by us.
Right,
And
right.
so typically, in a typical year, we lose, it's a required program. In a
Right.
typical year, we lose about $30,000 a year on lunch.
You lose
Lose.
30,000.
And so the program where the federal government is subsidizing free lunch for all students, we have more students accessing lunch than we've ever had
Right.
before. And so we are then reimbursed by the federal government based on the number of lunches that we serve.
Right.
And so we are actually, breaking even or slightly profitable finally because of the number of lunches that we're serving based on students not having to pay for them, I'm assuming.
Okay, you mentioned about an application that wasn't getting filled out, so since you're breaking even, does that mean you're getting more applications filled out?
Right now, so what I was referring to is that any student, even if they didn't put in an application, can access a free, a school lunch, right?
Right.
At no cost.
Right.
Typically, only students who have filled out that application are able to do that. No application is required right now. If they do go back to requiring an application, we do anticipate, again, it will be tough to get those in. We have made adjustments. We've made the application online. We've reached out to people one-on-one. We've kind of do all those
Right.
things. There are lots of regulations around how we can identify who students are. So we can't kind of go knocking on people's doors and picking
Right.
them out individually. And so there is often, in every district I've been in, this has been
An issue.
a challenge. So it
Yeah.
continues to be a challenge.
Yeah. They have no problem finding people to give out a free lunch, but to have some kind of accountability for it, we can't have that, right? So,
Again, I would say that long-term, right? The purpose of that is that we know kids need to
sure,
have nutrition in order to learn,
Understood.
right? And so kind of getting there, we really are seeing some nice outcomes of this.
now,
but
does that affect, do they count heads for lunches, for formula, for the school? The ride?
They do.
Okay, so, to me, from what I got out of all this, is that application is key for us to get more funding, correct?
Correct.
All right. Is there anything we can do to enhance, I know you're probably trying, you've done everything except door to door, but then you can't do that because it's too intrusive.
Correct. So we have done lots of pieces. We are incentivizing. And so, we have our school social worker that really does a lot of work with families that may be eligible. While we can't identify them per se, she can certainly use her networks to get the word out there. We've made it really easy. You can just do it from your phone now. And so we're doing everything that we can to get it out there. I think probably the applications will start to come in if this application ends and people need to buy lunch and they are having to pay and would like to not pay. And so, for us, long-term, we're playing the long game. I appreciate the sentiment in terms of it does have an effect on the formula that we have. We are not alone in this. This is what we are experiencing. Every district in the state is experiencing. And so they're working at that at the State House.
Okay, so the key is to get the families that need the meals, to let them understand that without the application, we may lose funding.
Correct.
Without being intrusive. Okay, all right. All right, COVID, I know my son's in there, in the school system. You're still impacted by COVID to some extent? You still?
So we,
How's
as you
that
know, kind of have come back after February break. There aren't any masks for students unless they would choose to wear them, and we just do have some students that still are choosing
Sure.
to do that.
Yep.
The biggest impact we're seeing is social right now. So one of the things that we had to do is, and Lisa, our elementary principal, is doing a great job with this, our kindergartners and first graders have never had recess without COVID restrictions. They literally don't know how to play.
That's right.
And so, we had to do a lot of education with them on here's how you do this the right way. For our high school kids, we have freshmen and sophomores that have never been to a high school dance, right?
Right.
And so kind of redoing those pieces and the social interactions is really key. We have a lot of mental health issues with students and families right now. We had a lot of students who literally were saying that they feel uncomfortable without their mask, not
Right.
because of COVID, but because they
It's a
feel
shield.
more
It's
vulnerable.
a safety
Right.
thing, yeah.
And so, there's a lot of families that are struggling. We have a lot of families that have experienced loss or a death, and so those kids are suffering. So there's it's a hard time. We have an excellent group of mental health professionals in the schools. They are doing a lot of work. We're reaching out and networking with other districts to support one another, but it's a tough time for a lot of families, and then we have a lot of kids struggling academically.
Now, the state funding some of these programs?
Yep.
and
So
they-
this is how we've used some of they're called the ESSA funds, or the COVID funds that we've gotten. And so we've invested in academics, in terms of having tutors and having extra interventionists to get kids up to speed. And then with mental health staff, we've really kind of invested in their training and helped them do those pieces. So we've had mental health pieces as well as academic pieces. It's what the funds are intended for.
So is the COVID money going to dry up here soon, or what's the
What do we have,
the
2 more
horizon
years?
on that?
Yep, so, we've
Okay, 324.
appropriately kind of allocated the money so that we're having it last as long as it can last, so it needs to be spent by September of 2024. So in our applications, we've budgeted in such a way that the money is spread out over that time period.
Okay, so you're not too far. You, last year, you guys, what would you ask for last year? It was like just 350, something like that?
Yeah, we were at 1.8% last year.
Yeah, okay. So then you're asking, okay. All right, that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. All right, I just have really kind of like one general set of questions. I'm trying to figure out how to calculate the per student cost of this in the school system, and I'm definitely doing it incorrectly, I think, because the numbers are very high. How do you, or what is the per student cost based on the way that it's calculated?
Right. Do you want to answer that? You want me to answer that? All right. So, basically what we do is there is a formula that RIDE uses, right, that does the per pupil cost. And some of the things that go into that, right, you're basically looking at salaries, benefits, infrastructure, kind of all those different things. Some things are kind of excluded at times depending on the student. So for example, when we are taking students in from another district, like we exclude transportation, for example, right? And so our per pupil is, I can give you the exact number. It's
I don't need the exact. I'm just looking for a ballpark just to see if
yeah,
we're in.
So it's in the $20,000 range, right?
Okay.
And that is really affected by our size. And one of the things that I would remind you of is that we have the same requirements as a district with students, twice as many students, right? And so it might be one person that is able to serve that in a district, but that number is distributed more in a larger district. But you still need to have that person.
Right.
So whether we have a principal of 300 kids or 700 kids, you still need to have a principal.
Yep.
So the per pupil cost of that principal for 300 kids, right, is double what it is for 700 kids, but the job is exactly the same. Right? And so that is true as you go through for any of our pieces. So we still have to have a custodian. Custodian, again, the denominator, right, is lower for us, so the per pupil is a little bit higher.
Yep.
I would say that when you're also looking at our per pupil, one of the things to realize is we have, and we choose to have it this way, our transportation is within our per pupil cost, right? Because we own our own transportation. It's a decision the community made a long time ago. We are streamlining those costs, so we went to 2 bus runs instead of 3 this year. That's been really successful. I should have put the change in school time on there today, actually, so that's been working out pretty well. But those costs continue for us, because our denominator is lower, to make our per pupil go higher, even if our buses were completely full, which they are at the elementary school, not at the high school, the cost is going to be the same because we're required to run the buses.
Yep, okay. And what is like the average, like the state average for per pupil? And again, I'm not looking, this isn't like, I'm not trying to
Yeah, I can get
grill you.
that
I
to
just want us to know this, because we get asked these questions, and I like to know the numbers.
So I can send you the chart, but essentially, average per pupil is somewhere around 17,000.
Okay.
And that's a guess on my part.
Yeah,
I don't have
right.
it, on top of my head, but I can look that up and get that to you.
Right. But we have like would you say we have a smaller class size than the average?
Oh, yes.
Right, we do.
We do.
Right.
And, for our younger students, intentionally so. Right? And particularly in the pandemic, we've kept our class sizes small. And sometimes it comes to erring on the side of supporting our students. So, for example, you saw some class sizes that were in the 70s, right? And so if you're just doing the simple math, right, you could either make that 3 classes of 25, right, or 4 classes of 17 and 18. We tend to go to the classes of 17 and 18. We believe class size matters, that kids are getting a better education that way. If we needed to make those adjustments, we could. We do believe that instruction would suffer for that.
Right, yeah. No, and I agree with that as well. And I agree with what you said earlier, that our schools are a main attractor of families to town. So, we're paying a premium for a premium service really to the community. But it's not so far above. Again, because I was like doing a basic calculation and it was totally off. So I just wanted to know kind of where we're at per pupil. So that's good to know. And see if there's anything else. The auditorium project, was that held back because of COVID? I thought we had talked about that like a couple years back. We delayed it, right?
We did.
So-
We
right.
did. So we just, with COVID coming, it was supposed to be about 2 years ago. So we delayed it a little bit, and now we're actually at a point where we can accelerate it. So it was supposed to be a 2-year project. We're putting it into 1, so we're catching up. The worry right now, and I know you all are dealing with other construction projects, is around the availability of contractors and the cost of materials.
Yeah.
Right? And so we want to make sure that we are moving forward in a responsible way. Our OPM has been doing a great job and really been working with us in terms of projecting out what the costs are going to be, right, and making the appropriate choices within the budget that we have.
Yep. And then when we held off on that during COVID, did we replace that with other capital projects, or did we just save money for those years?
So we had to move some stuff around, so we had to do ventilation
Yep.
during COVID. So that originally, what had been allocated for the auditorium, some of that went to ventilation and other COVID-related projects.
Okay, great. I think that is it for me. Oh, I just want to recap. So the overall budget is like 34 million, a little bit over, but the town's payment is in the 27 million range, correct? Okay, great. Okay, that's great, thank you.
Yeah, I have one more question about per student cost. Now, did the cost per student go up as far as when we receive a student from another district?
Great question. So I could go really down the rabbit hole here, but essentially, here's the current legislation is that RIDE sets the tuition rate for each district. And so the way that it works is that we get what the district spends average per pupil, right, from that district for educating them in Narragansett, even though it might cost us more to educate that student. So, and likewise, they get our average per pupil. What is on the books now is that they're going to be redoing that, and it is proposed in legislation to redo that formula so that we are receiving what it costs to actually educate them in our district and giving out what it actually costs to educate someone in their district, which is reasonable.
So essentially, if it costs more to go to Narragansett, we're going to get that cost covered.
Correct. Right now, I will tell you, because we have enough students coming in that the cost of educating them in Narragansett now is covered. We're able to make that work, but it is because we have a good number of students coming in, so we're able to spread that cost across several classes.
Yeah, they had a standard number, wasn't it 12,500 for years, and it was a standard number?
Good memory, it used to be somewhere around that, and then there was some tuition on top of that. Right now, for example, we receive, I'm gonna say around 13,000 from North Kingstown, maybe like 15,000 from South Kingstown, and we pay out around 17,000.
So that's going to reverse.
Yes, that's my hope if it passes, but it should.
But also, when we think about the per student cost, that's when you spread it out through the whole budget. Like, if we get one more student, it's not like we're spending exactly $20,000 on that person. There might be room in that class that it doesn't cost really anything extra.
Correct. And so it's, the cost is negligible when we're going, a class goes from 18 to 19. Right? And that's often the case. Where it really becomes an issue is if we have to add a section, right? So, or we have to add a teacher. We haven't been in that place, and before we accept students, we really look at our enrollment and see if we have space for that student, because we're not going to want to add a section just for one student.
One more question. The total number of students, what's the breaking point where it starts costing us a lot more money?
It's a good question. I think it depends on the program, right? And so if we get to a place, let's say, for example, you have 100 students, right, in a class, and all of those students need to take English, right? And 100 students, 5 sections of English, there's 20, right? So that's one teacher. If I got 30 new students in, I'm gonna have to hire another teacher for one more section, or maybe a section and a half, right? That hasn't happened to us yet. And so when you get to a place where the number of students that are coming in, the cost of taking in those students exceeds the cost that it would be to hire the sections of teachers that you need to cover that, that's when it no longer is financially viable. We are not in that place. So the number of students that we take in, even if we have to add a section, the volume of students that were coming in is covering the cost
It's
of that
already a
teacher.
fixed cost.
Right.
Right. So like we got what, 1,100 students total?
Roughly 1,200.
1,200, okay. So the break-off is probably 18, 16?
Yeah, and
100.
remember, for every student that we take in, we are getting enough resources because it's the per pupil cost of the sending district. The costs between districts aren't that wildly discrepant that it would make it not possible for us to kind of use that cost to support extra sections or educating that child. And, there are certain programs that are more expensive than others. Plumbing is an expensive program, right? And so
Yeah, copper
is-
is $350 a ton now.
Yeah,
Copper went way
right?
up.
And so plumbing's an expensive program. For us, it's worth it. Some of the cost of plumbing, right, is spread out through, we get grants from the state. So we get a Perkins grant, we get other grants that are then help us support that
Offset.
program.
Okay. Okay, good. All right, thank you.
All right, great. Okay, I think, Deb, are you good? Did you have any? Okay, perfect. So I just want to make sure to give the school committee a chance if they had anything they wanted to speak on. I already talked to a couple members that said they were good to go, but if Chairperson McNeese would like to speak, we'd appreciate, or, we would be happy to hear you.
It's really just, it's a quick hello and a quick thank you. We really appreciate the open dialogue, through every meeting that we've had with you, and just want to continue to encourage that any questions you have, Peter is the best person to direct that to, but, we're happy to, partner with you. The one comment that I thought about, Jesse, you said it's like a quality product at a, quality price. I can't remember exactly what you said, but I thought about that graph that Pete had where it looked at, what does the taxpayer pay? In Narragansett, we're pretty close to like 50-50. So for every, resident in town, half of their dollars are going to the municipal side and half to the school. So I think that's really impressive. So again, I can't remember exactly what you said, but it's, you get what you pay for. But in Narragansett, it's close to that 50-50. So you really are getting, this is the greatest place in the world to live. We have an amazing town, amazing schools, and very reasonable taxes here.
Right.
But it's really just a thank you for the partnership. Keep that dialogue open. That's what's important, and we appreciate that.
Oh, we appreciate you guys.
Yeah,
Thank you. Okay, great. Peter, was there anything else?
Nope, I'd just like to again say, thank you for your support. I think, it's really a pleasure to work with Jim and Christine. I think she was here somewhere. Oh, there you are. And again, I think, one of the hallmarks of Narragansett when I've been here is really that partnership between the town side and the school side. We keep each other informed. We really try to work together for the benefit of the whole community, and it's really a pleasure to partner with them on all these things, and we appreciate your all support of the schools. Couldn't do it without you.
All right, thank you, Peter. Was there anyone from the public who was interested in speaking? Stanley? Stanley, welcome. Please state your full name and address. Is the microphone on?
Is it on now?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Again, I just wanted, I didn't know if I was confused on hearing a $5 million fund balance, so that's like a surplus. And I thought I heard that last year, the operating fund balance, we only used 685. So I think that fund balance, I don't know if we need to carry such a fund balance going forward. So that's an area where I think, you know, if we get the fund balance, cut that thing in half, you know, we wouldn't have an increase, I don't think. That was my major thing. Like I say, I just sitting back here, 1,189 kids, 140 teachers, and that's nine kids per teacher. And I understand, it's 17, I understand all the breakdowns, and therefore I'm confused about it. But still, overall, we're talking 9 kids per teacher staffing. And that's not counting the 33 teacher assistants. 9 kids per teacher overall. There's got to be a way to try to restructure the classes somehow. I don't know. I guess we're such a small school, we can't. But we can make a bigger effort to I don't like to hit on 9 kids. I had 35 kids in my class all the way through junior high and high school. I had 30 anywhere from 32 to 35 kids in my class, and I was still able to go to college. So obviously, it still can handle that. So that, I was hoping that somehow that we could figure out. And then like I say, the per student cost, like you say, I guess you calculated 29,000. If you look at the final number is 29,000 per student. Of course, I don't know how you manipulate all the numbers, but if you look at the final number, 3.4 million, and the final number of children, 1,189, it comes out to about 29,000. Did you do that? I think you did that. That's probably a question that came back down to 20,000 per kid. And even though you're 20,000 a kid, you're still only getting 15 or 13 from the out-of-town kids. I get nervous as we can try to expand that thing. So I guess the biggest thing is the fund balance. If we just reduce the fund balance, we wouldn't have any increase. What do we need a fund balance for? I don't think we're going to expand any building or facility. And that goes for the auditorium. I think another variant of we might have more problems. For us to step forward, why don't we clean it and paint it? That's all we need to do to the auditorium at this point. Clean it and paint it, and not this $1.5 million issue, number one. And then we don't need a fund balance because I don't see us expanding. As we're losing students, we're losing kids. My own daughter, she 2 kids, and I said, hey, everybody else had 3, 4, 5 kids. 2 kids, no. It's not only bringing families in. The families who are here, I'm not so sure they have more than 1 or 2 kids anymore. I think we've got a long-term decrease in the number of children, and it's not only Narragansett, it's statewide, country, it's just less kids coming, so we don't need the facilities expansion, so we don't need the fund balance to plan for an expansion, I don't think. So I think we could get down to, instead of 2.15, we could have a 0. Could be a 0 just based on fund balance alone. And why don't we do that? What's the stress? What's the stress factor? We don't need another school. I don't know. Buses? I don't know. That's another thing. I guess you can only go 40 minutes, so you can't cut down the number of routes. Somebody yelled at me more than once. I only saw 10 kids, 5 kids on a bus. Yeah, but they can only be on there 40 minutes or something. I told them that was an issue. You know, can we go back and revise that somehow? Go to the state, say, listen, we got 5, 10 kids on a bus. And either that or we got to do vans. Put them in a van. You know, I don't know. Maybe that's a savings. I don't even know where that is. But let's plan for what I think is a reduction here as time goes on, or at least a stability factor, stability, so we don't have to have the fund balance. And that would give us a 0. And I don't think that wouldn't hurt the education. Just doesn't have so much excess money hanging around. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Stanley. Anyone else? Mary? Mary, please state your full name and address.
Mary Wojciechowski, Boss Neck Road. At one time, I think they had the 3 bus runs, but they went to 2 bus runs. They're going back to 3 bus runs again? They're going to do 2. That's good.
Yeah.
Then another thing, on tuition, are you paying tuition to, say, Compass School, Monsignor Clark, all the private schools? No, just listed.
Not private, right, just the public
Are you
schools.
have to buy textbooks for them when they're in those schools? But they return them to us? They do. Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mary. Anyone else? Okay, looks like that's it. All right, well, we want to thank everyone again for coming out and to the school committee for all the work you guys do throughout the years.
Council President,
Yep,
close the public hearing, please.
I will. I was just still speaking. But you make it easy for the council. We appreciate that, especially compared to what some other towns go through with their school budgets. So thank you. Do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
All right, motion by Eva, second by Patrick. All in favor? Aye. Aye. Motion approved, 5-0. And do we have a motion to adjourn? Oh, sorry, 4-0. And do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
All right, motion.
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved, 4-0.